Hi, I'm Dr. Todd Cunningham, one of the psychologists at the Bright Light Psychology Clinic.
And I'm Robin Bacher, and I'm an educational consultant who works with Bright Light Psychology Clinic. Today, we're going to talk all about siblings. It is something that probably parents wonder about all the time, and probably more so now that you've been stuck together and your kids have been stuck together with each other for an extended amount of time. So, let's talk a little bit about why siblings tend to get into squabbles or fights or disagreements a lot, and maybe more so now.
Well, I think anytime we're all together in one place, there's definitely going to be different opinions that come out and people feeling that their voices aren't being heard or that something has happened that has been a hurt towards them. So siblings naturally are going to run into conflict. We all naturally run into conflict, even with our significant others at some point. We all have our own interpretation of events, of what's going on. We have our own needs and wants, and sometimes there's conflict. So having it is not abnormal. What we do know is that it's really important for us to model to our kids on how to resolve these situations. Knowing that they're going to come up, we know it's how we as parents begin to model it. So the first thing we always start out is this idea of mutual respect. You know, that we do to the others as we would like to be done to us. And sometimes we need to create that very concrete, especially for young kids, such as we never take toys out of each other's hands. If someone else has a toy, we don't take it out. So I know watching my kids when we created this rule, that the youngest would just basically sit there waiting for the oldest one to put the toy down and then quickly grab it, because the rule was you couldn't take it out of the hand, but now it was down, I could grab it. And so then of course then the conflict would emerge. And so we'd have to talk that through and be able to help the younger one know, yes, you can't take it out of the hand, but there's also an intent around the toys. So the rule begins to build a bit, but the concrete rule of can't take it out of hand is really one about respect. I'm not just going to go over and grab something. The other one we had is there's no physical hitting or throwing of things towards each other, or using any put downs, and we model that. We had them sit there, and even with the young one, to say, what does it look like to throw something? What does it look like when we don't throw something? And we begin to be able to model that. If there is a main violation of one of those key rules, then the piece is that there is a timeout for the younger one to help them understand the importance of these rules. But as they get older, kind of past 3, 4, then you don't need to use those level of kind of consequences. The consequence really is then helping them to talk together about what's going on. How did this make me feel? So we use the when you did this, I felt this, to be able to go back and forth. And sometimes both of them both sides are actually feeling very angry towards each other. And so we do need to take a break. We need to take a 5-minute break to be able to move away. But it's important at any point we take that break that we do come back after that 5 minutes, because the other thing we don't want is a feeling of kind of abandonment that can happen. Siblings who are close, who play a lot together, if they suddenly are saying, I have to, one saying, I have to take a 5-minute break, the other one might actually feel more emotionally charged because, oh my goodness, now you don't want to be with me. And that can lead to more conflict arising. And so whenever you do take the break, we have to be able to come back together within that time period so that we can continue on with the conversation. And maybe when we come back together, we're not ready to come back. So sometimes, we need a little bit more break because I feel like I'm still emotionally charged from this last situation. But again, parents have to help facilitate that. They need to model that. They need to model the type of respectful talking to each other. They have to model staying calm or helping one to get calm, to be able to engage in that kind of conversation, to be able to allow it to happen. And I think the other thing is sometimes it's just people just need a little time apart. It doesn't mean that every moment of waking hours that both kids need to be playing with each other. They have different interests. They're also going to be at probably different ages. So, my older one loves to read, and, we start finding her hanging out in the washroom and other weird places trying to get 2 minutes to read because her younger sibling always wanted to play with her, and she'd be walking around trying to figure out where she was. Where did she disappear to? So setting those times aside to say, okay, we are going to do some things independently for a period of time is also very, very healthy for them as well.
Yeah, and I think in my family, I have one boy and one girl, and so there's also a difference of, interests that comes along with that. My son always wants to roughhouse, and my daughter's not interested.
Yeah.
And so we sort of have to build in those times for him, especially because he's not around his friends, to get that sort of type of physical play that he really desires. And sometimes it's mom who has to, jump in and say, okay, we're gonna wrestle, or we're gonna do this, and things like that. So I think being aware also of what each individual child needs and might not be able to get from each other could help as well. One of the strategies you mentioned made me think about, I think it's called sports casting, where when there is a squabble and your children are older and they know the rules, you take a step back and you just highlight what you see going on. So it might be like, oh, your sister looks really upset. Like, what you're doing, I see her face. Look, her face is, what do you notice about her face? Look how upset. Or I hear your sister saying, and you're just pointing out what you notice, and then it might help. It works in my family. It helps the other sibling go, oh, I'm not paying attention to how what I'm doing is making my sibling feel. So sports casting is another great strategy for those older kids who sort of already know what the expectation is. Um, why do siblings, I guess, have more squabbles than, let's say, they do with their friends? What is it about siblings that makes them, maybe be more physical or say things that they wouldn't say to their friends?
Yeah, we choose our friends. We don't necessarily choose our siblings. So we're stuck together in this family unit, and so there's a longer history often of these relationships coming developing. An older sibling might feel resentful of a younger sibling because when they were two and they used to get all of their parents' attention, suddenly this new person came on the screen and then their parents didn't pay as much attention to them. And so they feel this actually kind of a emotional wound here because of the presence of that sibling. They might not actually be able to consciously be able to articulate that, but there is this kind of, the brain has learned this association between around it. We have also more closer contact with them. Our friends, we take steps away, so we come back, we go away, we come back. Again, we have these very close, a long period of close interactions. And so therefore more events can happen very, very quickly. And then again, if there's more negative things, there's accumulation of those. We also have different ages, and ability levels and the interests. You're talking about two genders, two very different interests. Luckily in my house, everybody's about horses right now, and everything's horse, 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 horse. They want a horse for, Christmas. So there's a common theme which helps them be able to connect together and be able to do more of that sustained joint play. But there might be very different interests within the siblings. So again, it's harder for them to come together to be able to connect. Whereas our friends, that's not the case. We choose our friends based on areas of interest, and that's what we talk about, and so that's really important. There's also that similar age usually within our friends, especially with young kids, and also alignment of gender with younger kids, in terms of the friendships that we have. So we have a better understanding of the other who I'm with, and that allows me to be able to interact and enjoy that time more, and also leading to possibly less conflict overall.
You spoke a little bit about, older child, feeling resentful when the younger one comes along. So in terms of like sibling rivalry, I come from one of four, so I know all about sibling rivalry. What do you think parents can do to sort of help reduce some of that sort of competitive rivalry that siblings might feel among each other?
Yeah, a lot. A lot has to do with first trying to understand why the rivalry is there. So one of the big things is to have special dates with each of your kids individually, so that they're getting that one-on-one time with you, which is really important for them, so that they can feel connected to each parent without having to compete for the parent's attention from the sibling. The other thing is to make sure that we have different breaking rates for each kids. Kids have different strengths and challenges, and so therefore the younger ones are often trying to mimic everything that the older one is doing. They look up to this awesome individual and they're trying to compete at the same level, but there's a 3-year gap, so there's no way they can compete at the same level. So it's really important to recognize the different strengths that they have, and talk about those, and highlight those, and also that they don't have to be in competition. Maybe it really helping to nurture the different strengths of each child, so that they are no longer having to compete on the same stage, but can show their own in different stages. um, and Yeah, and then just going back to what we talked about earlier, is then also modeling, talking about when there is conflict, about how to do it in a respectful way in terms of resolving that.
Absolutely. All right, those are some great tips. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye.